right?
So you shouldn't be able to act on it and impinge on people.
You shouldn't. Where I take reserve with it, right, is where it becomes a financial hit to a culture that has faced financial hits for most of its life. Some of it self-imposed, right? I'm not going to sit here and play victim for the black culture. We've made our share of mistakes. All cultures have made their share of mistakes, okay? But the housing market should be the one area where, because it's a box, right, with doors and windows and a roof, and they're all fundamentally built the same. There's no skin color related to the housing market. There should be absolutely no room for this sort of inequality in the appraisal system. But I need you to know, as a listener of the show, it is happening, it is real, it is out there.
Check, 1 2 1 2.
Turn it up.
Welcome to the Foreclosure Deals Coach podcast.
The tides are turning. The time is now.
Your home for the mindset, methodology, and tools needed to invest in foreclosures.
Don't you dare buy a house. Buy a deal. You need to get into this right now.
Yeah.
And now your host, the Foreclosure Deals Coach, Donny Corum.
Hello, and welcome back to the Foreclosure Deals Coach podcast. I'm your host and Foreclosure Deals Coach, Donny Corum, and I just want to thank you guys for being out here each and every single week. I've got my executive producer in the studio with me, Mr. Jonathan Winston.
Hello, how's it going? What's going on, guys? Yeah.
That's a very strange voice you got there, Jay. All right.
Man, it's just I don't know. I woke up like this today and feeling kind of cool about it, so I'm going to roll with it.
You're going to clear your throat or something. I don't know, man. It's freaking me out. You all right? You good? All right.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm here.
You know, on the Foreclosure Deals Coach podcast, we talk about the mindset, methodology, and tools to be a successful foreclosure investor. We encourage you to download the dealhunter.io software so you can do property valuation in your local market. And we want to help you to overcome whatever's stopping you from becoming a lucrative foreclosure investor. Yeah, and I bring that up because we're not going to go off topic too much. This is real estate related. But I'm posting an article into our Facebook group today, something that really got to me. And the article was basically, here's the title. It was from The Hill, and a newspaper in the Florida area. And it says, Florida couple says home was appraised by 40% higher after removing black relatives' photos. Okay, so listen, we got a lot going on with race relations here in the U.S. right now. Okay, a lot of people are dealing with that situation. We've got the Black Lives Matter thing going on, and there's a lot of validity to what's happening. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we don't need to really take a hard look at race relations in the United States of America, because clearly we do, okay? But I'll be frank with you and tell you we've been here before. We've dealt with these things before. Police brutality is not a new thing in this country. Like, the
Definitely
problems we're facing are not new. Okay,
Been here for a while.
I'm not saying we don't need to deal with it. I respect those who are taking a stand or those who are taking a knee. You know, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, you have to respect with the fact that people are trying to call attention to this very real problem. Okay, but this problem worries me a little bit more, because outward racism is pretty obvious. You know, when the Ku Klux Klan shows up and they park a cross on your lawn and light it on fire, you got no real lack of clarity as to how they feel about you, right? That's just sort of how it works. As a black man here in America, that's something I have dealt with my entire life. And, you know, listen, I don't let it bug me. I think most guys don't let it bug me. And I don't think most people are naturally racist. Okay, it's not turning into, I believe, this problem. But this article explains that a mixed race couple, they had an appraiser come in and value their home at $330 back in June, and that was valued at more than 40% higher the second time they had it approved, when they had it appraised, when they removed images of their black family members. Okay, and this hit home for me because the leading way to build wealth in the United States of America, and arguably anywhere in the world, but definitely right here in the U.S., is through real estate ownership. Okay, just period. We have set this system up so if you want to get wealthy, if you want to find retirement, you can certainly put money into the stock market and you can watch your mutual funds grow. You can do that, but I can tell you that has its volatility, right? It goes up, it goes down. as does the housing market. But one surefire way to guarantee wealth transfer is to invest in real estate in some capacity or another. Whether that is in your primary residence, which is for most people the largest single investment they own, or it's in buying investment property, or it's in fix and flipping like I do, or wholesaling. The primary way to get rich in this country is the real estate market, hands down. And this problem, this article opened up a can of worms on whether appraisals, which are basically an opinion of value. Okay, so somebody comes into your home during an appraisal, they walk around, they take pictures, they're then supposed to take the data they've recovered from that inspection, put it into their appraisal calculator, if you will, and then figure out what the property is worth.
Should be pretty cut and dry. If I got, the marble countertops, if I've got the, high-end floors, if I've got, a pocket doors and all around my house, it should appraise, at whatever I've got in my house, it should appraise at that level, right?
It should, right? Because based on what everybody else in the neighborhood has, or they have that similar square footage or floor plan, or they built in the same era, they determine that based on sold comps in the same neighborhood. What shouldn't factor into the appraisal?
Opinion, right?
Opinion or the residents that live there. Right? Does it matter if the occupants are black, brown, Puerto Rican, or Haitian?
Like that.
It shouldn't matter, right? Because the house is worth what the house is worth.
Right.
But this article shows that by making one change, which was removing the fact that there's a black family associated with this property, the value of the property changed by 40%.
That's almost half.
That's insane is what it is. Okay, so I've got two stories for you, and then really I want to hear your opinion of this. Because if I'm off base here, then I want to hear it, because I feel like, this has been a concern of mine for a very long time, but now that we're really dealing with race relations head on, we're starting to see actual evidence of racial bias in the appraisal system. Now, this is from a guy, so a little background on me. I've been in real estate for 18 years. Okay, I have a real estate license, I have an appraisal license, I have a mortgage license, and I've fixed and flipped over 200 properties in my career. Okay, so I believe I'm a little bit talented or competent to really go into how I think this is affecting the marketplace. But I want to hear from you. Join up at the Foreclosure Deals Coach Insiders Group, where this article will be published, and the link will be right here in the show notes. You can check it out. Join up. Let's talk about it, because if I'm off base, let's hear about it. But I'm going to go with story number one. I've got a good friend of mine. We were trying to see if we get him to join the show today, but we weren't able to set it up. But he's a good buddy of mine, and he had an appraisal done on his upper end home in the Pine Creek neighborhood of Colorado Springs, Colorado. Now, if you're familiar with Colorado at all, you'll know that right now Colorado Springs is considered one of the hottest real estate markets in the United States of America. Okay, Pine Creek would be the upper end elite, and this particular gentleman happens to be African American. He's a good friend of mine. He's a deacon at my church for many years. He's sort of my spiritual advisor, and just a guy that I hang out with on a pretty consistent basis. Right? So he calls me late one night just hopping mad. He's refinancing his property and needed to get an appraisal done to get that refinance done. So the thing about the appraisal process is banks rely on appraisers to go out and give them the valuation of the property so they don't overlend based on what the property is worth. Okay, the appraisal is all about protecting the bank. So don't ever, if you're ever wondering why they do an appraisal, an inspection is designed to protect the guy buying the house. Right? It's looking at the property from a functionality aspect if there are problems. But the appraisal has one purpose and one purpose only, and that is protecting the bank and making sure they're not putting too much money into the wrong asset. Okay? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But when you're refinancing or purchasing a home, the bank's going to get an appraisal done. So this guy comes into the house, some conversation goes on, Trump comes up in the conversation for reasons I can't quite explain, I just don't think
Wait a minute.
Yeah, he's talking about, how he's a big Trump supporter, and this is during the appraisal, mind you, okay?
Sir, appraise my house.
Yeah,
How about
seriously.
that?
I don't want to talk about the politics while you're up in my house, man. Right? So he's having a conversation with the guy, and in the end, the appraisal comes in. Now, you got to keep in mind, the guy in question, the guy whose house is being appraised, he's a black guy. His family's black people, right? He's got pictures of them up there, and he's having a conversation with the appraiser about Trump. And again, whether your opinion on Trump is positive or negative, you know, there's a little bit of stuff going on with the whole... Okay, there's a bit of stuff going on in race relations as it relates to Trump. Something that should have never come up during an appraisal at all, but it did, and it made the situation very awkward, okay? Fast forward a couple of days, appraisal comes in. But the guy whose house is being appraised is also a 15-year veteran of real estate.
Wow, okay. I bet
Runs one of the only black-owned brokerages. There's like 3 in the city of Colorado Springs. He owns one of them, a very successful brokerage, Harmony Real Estate in the Colorado Springs marketplace, okay? And this appraisal comes in roughly, he and I had differing opinions of what the property's worth. We used to talk about it all the time. In his opinion, it came in about 60, 70 grand light. In my opinion, it came in about $100,000 light, okay? But he was trying to be conservative, because he doesn't want to raise a stink, but he needs this property to appraise at a certain level for his refi to go through. Looking into the appraisal further, we start missing some data. Like the house is a 5-bedroom house, and it came in at 4 bedrooms.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, and had pictures of all the bedrooms. Okay, but some reason we only counted that. Not all the square footage was counted. And all of this went into a calculation of finding other comparable sales in there which had lower condition. They did not have the same countertops. They did not have the same upgrades and et cetera that he used to comp this property. And there were comps really close by, like one right across the street that came in at sufficient value that for some reason was omitted entirely. Okay, now, am I accusing the appraiser of racism? I'm not trying to, okay? Like, I'm going to tell you, like, I really want to give the benefit of the doubt here. I'm doing the best I can to see this, but I got to tell you, as I'm hearing this story, I'm getting hopping mad. Like, I'm literally ready, fit to be tied, man, because the biggest asset most of us own, and in this case, it's also the case that this guy is successful in his own right, okay? It's not like he's hurting for money, but his largest single asset is tied up in this property, and now it's come in about $100,000, in my opinion, as an investor, an appraiser, and a real estate agent, lower than it should have come in had it been appraised properly. Okay, that's the problem with appraisals. It's an opinion of value, and people are certainly entitled to their opinion, but as an appraiser, it's a professional opinion, and that opinion can impact lives in very dangerous ways. In this case, in this article, they came in 40% different between black photos being up on the property and only white photos being up on the property. Okay, and that doesn't just scare me, it incenses me. Like, I can tell you that it's something that I've known has been a problem for a long time, but seeing it both in a personal setting, okay, and now in this article going on, this is not the first time this has come out. Much like the race relations we're dealing with across the board, this is not the first time this has been a problem.
People have talked about it before. We've had these discussions amongst ourselves.
We have. So let's fast forward a little bit, okay, because this starts to hit home. My wife and I are flipping a property in the Highlands Ranch neighborhood, and we're going to have Laura back on. Hopefully you heard the show where we bought the property, the beginning stages, because we're heading towards the end stages now. The property's under contract, preparing to sale here in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Hey.
List price of $1.15 million, okay? So this is a very high-end property. And guys, I got to be frank with you. I knew of the time of the appraisal. I knew when it was supposed to happen. And as a guy who knew about this article before, as a guy who had just talked to his good friend who was upset about his appraisal coming in $100,000 light, I was nervous, man. And I was doing everything I could. I said, you know what? I'm just going to take the Donny factor out of this, take the black guy factor out of this, and I'm going to get out of this house before this appraiser gets here. And I did everything in my power to do so. Like, woke up that morning, I'm ready to go. But the appraiser was on their game today, man. The appraiser was on their game today. And they decided they wanted to see if they could join up early, because they got to the house like a good 30 minutes early. And normally I would commend like being early, right? Like, thank you. But this was one of those days I was not trying to be up in that house, right?
Hi, this is Donny Corum, your foreclosure deals coach. It's important to have good credit when you're buying a foreclosure. A lot of people think you can come in with bad credit, but the fact of the matter is you need pretty stable credit scores to buy a foreclosure deal. So how do you find out how to increase your credit? Well, there's tons of credit repair agencies out there and multiple formulas, but one thing we found that works is reporting your monthly rental payments to the credit bureau. We've partnered with rentreporters.com, the leading provider of adding your payment history direct from your landlord onto your credit bureau scores, and it helping people to boost their scores up to 40 points in as little as 30 days. So to get started, I want you to head on out to www.foreclosuredealscoach.com. Now that's a messenger bot, and you're going to use the keyword rent to get more information about Rent Reporters and how you can boost your credit score by getting your rental reported to the credit bureaus. Once again, Donny Corum, your foreclosure deals coach. Check it out.
So Laura lets them in, and I'm trying to scurry out the black back door.
Scurry out. That's a Freudian slip right there, sir. There are no black. We paint our doors red. There are no black doors here. I'm going out the front door. Thank you very much.
I'm trying to scurry out the black door because I do not want these people to see me. And listen, it's the unfortunate part of this is that I feel this way. Okay, it is not the reality of the numbers. The appraisal at the time of this recording has not come in yet. Okay, but if it comes in lower, I'm going to be upset. Right?
Yeah, it's not going to come in lower. It's there are professional people out there, man.
I don't think it's going to come in lower either, but I got to tell you, Jay, like the problem is that there's still the overt racism. I don't really have much of a problem with that. If you got a problem with me because I'm a black man, they got a problem with you because you're a black man.
Sure, problem, man.
The neat thing about living in this country is it's sort of cool to hate certain groups of people. Like it's not. I don't think it's a good idea.
Give me your girl.
But that's why you get in trouble right there. It's saying stuff like that. It's okay if you dislike me based on the color of my skin. Honestly, I think it's one of the freedoms that, as ugly as it is, it should be protected. We should have the right to hate whoever we want. Okay, that's just how it should be. We should love everybody equally, but if you got a thing for a certain class or a certain type of person, that it would take away from all of our freedoms if we stopped you from not having your freedoms, right?
So you shouldn't be able to act on it and impinge on people.
You shouldn't. Where I take reserve with it, right, is where it becomes a financial hit to a culture that has faced financial hits for most of its life. Some of it self-imposed, right? I'm not going to sit here and play victim for the black culture. We've made our share of mistakes. All cultures have made their share of mistakes, okay? But the housing market should be the one area where, because it's a box, right, with doors and windows and a roof, and they're all fundamentally built the same. There's no skin color related to the housing market. There should be absolutely no room for this sort of inequality in the appraisal system. But I need you to know, as a listener of the show, it is happening, it is real, it is out there. Okay? And I just, it breaks my heart to even have this discussion. But, I wanted to see if it was possible, actually, like I said, we were trying to get John on the show. He just messaged me. I'm going to see if he can actually join up. Maybe he can answer a few questions of what happened with his situation, and we'll try to shape this thing up. But, guys, what I want you to take away from this is that it's out there, and we need to be aware of it. If you can't grasp, because a lot of people, my wife included, my wife is white, okay, and she's just of the mindset that it's not as proliferate as it once was. I agree with that. I don't think it's near as bad as it was at a time, okay, but it's still pretty bad when somebody can lose 40% of their value at the stroke of a pen, right? So it's a somber moment. I know it's not a super fun show, but guys, be cognizant of the fact that the market impacts everybody, and no matter your position, I would like to think that all of my listeners don't have a race problem, because if you weren't aware before, I'm a black guy. So
me too.
If that bugs you, tuning out now is probably appropriate.
See you later.
Right? But I don't think you all have a problem with that. I think society still does, and I'm certain that the appraisal system still does. And now we have to find a way to make sure that doesn't happen. So I snuck out of my own home to avoid being seen in my property because of fear that it might impact the value. Okay, and I promise I will report back as to whether the appraisal comes in clean. Like Jay said, there's a pretty good shot. I won't be impacted at all, but it's really eating me alive that it's something I even had to think about. I had to consider. That I could impact the value of this property and end up losing the sale for myself and my wife because a lot of people out there don't think that a black guy should be living in and owning a $1.2 million house. There are a lot who do. I've met a ton of them. I'm not the only one, but a lot of people take reserve with that. And when you meet with an appraiser who may have off political opinions on that day or in general, the combination of those two things can be disastrous for the overall wealth building of not just black people, but the entire country at large. Here's why. Black people own a lot of homes. Right? So if their appraisals come in light, they end up having to sell for less. If they sell for less, you better believe that impacts every white person in that neighborhood's property values too. Right? I'm not just talking about protecting black people against this problem. I'm saying systemic racism of any form needs to be eliminated. But these are the hidden nuggets that are out there that people aren't even thinking about. Oh my God, a house could come in lower simply because of the residents inside. You got to really let that sink in for a minute. So how do we beat it? How do we get around this problem? Well, it's actually quite simple. It's education, okay? And no, the Zillow's estimate ain't going to do it, right? We're not going to have a Zillow tirade, but you're not going to be able to get your valuation from Zillow. Zillow is a company looking to buy homes in a lot of markets right now, and I can assure you, as the market starts to decline, they're going to be buying homes at a lot more markets. So asking Zillow what your property value is a lot like asking the barber how's the haircut.
Oh, man, that's the best that I've ever seen, man.
That'll be $15.95, right? Still getting haircuts for $15.95. I'm bald. I shaved my head off, so I don't know what haircuts go for anymore.
Nah, it's a little bit more than that. I pay like $25 today.
See, there's another systemic oppression on hair. It's happening everywhere, man. We got to put a stop to this.
I don't know, man.
$25, worth it though. You look good. You can't trust Zillow. Right? So how are you going to figure out what your property value is worth? You need to watch your market. If a neighbor's house goes up for sale, pay some interest to it. I know it's very easy to drive by the yard signs and just see another house for sale. You're not selling, so you're not thinking about it, right? So you just got to move on. You should know what houses are selling for in your neighborhood. You should track that really closely. Right? If you don't have access to the data, you can get it from dealhunter.io, and you can log in and see every sold comp in any neighborhood anywhere in the United States of America. It's an overkill amount of data for a layman. You don't need that all the time. You certainly need to pay for it. But if you're an investor, you need that tool anyway. Right? So if you've got that tool, pay attention to your own property value. And listen, that goes for you whether you're a renter or an owner. You should know right now what the house you live in would sell for. Okay, it's just so important to understand the market data because if all of us were suitably educated on property values, this kind of thing could not happen. You know what really scares me is had these people not gotten the second appraisal, they would have believed the first appraisal that was 40% lower, and they would have sold that house for that price, never knowing they had undersold. And it scares the hell out of me that that's happening all across the country right now where people are uneducated or undereducated about what their property is worth, and they're selling out low based on racially biased appraisals. It is happening. This article is proof that it's happening, and we got to do something about it. Okay, so join the conversation as far as that goes too. Become a part of understanding what your valuation is. And I'm going to throw this out there. I've offered it multiple times. I put it on my Facebook page. As soon as I read this article, I put it out there because I was so mad at what I had gone through, what my buddy John had gone through, and now what this couple was going through, all the same system, that I posted out there. If anybody needs assistance in evaluating their property for sale or refi, then please reach out to me. And I'm going to extend that to you as well. Find me on LinkedIn, join up the Foreclosure Deals Coach Insiders Group. I will do an absolutely free, no obligation. I'm not looking to list your house, right? I'm not looking to buy your house unless you want to sell it. I'm going to leave that open.
Hey, man, that's up to you.
Right? But if you're not, I just want to help, genuinely. And that goes for you regardless of your color, race, or creed. But I do want to send a shout out to those who might be impacted by this systemic racism, that you need to pay special attention to the appraisal and what's going on there. Don't just glaze over that the value came in or the value didn't come in. You need to know why the value did or did not come in. You also need to know that appraisal is not set in stone. Okay, just because the appraiser said this is what your property is worth, that's not the end-all be-all. Depending on the type of loan that you have, VA comes to mind, that appraisal stays in the system for 6 months, right? But this is not the end-all be-all. You can and should dispute a low-ball appraisal if you feel like the value came in. Don't worry about the discrimination piece of it, right? Just at very least, if your gut tells you when you see the appraised value that it's lower than what you think you should have gotten, don't stand for it. Get a second appraisal. Yes, appraisals are expensive. They're expensive because they're generally worth it. Okay, in this case, that second appraisal added $100,000 to the value of that property. Okay, so if you spend $750 on an appraisal, you've got your money back several times over. I want you to also pay special attention to the elderly community out there, grandma, grandpa, again, particularly on the black side, but just in general, because they've seen their property values go when they were buying that house back in the 1970s for 60, 70 grand to worth in the Denver market, 400, 500 grand. They have no idea in a lot of cases what these properties are worth right now, and they don't generally have the technology acumen to go find out on their own. So if grandma and grandpa are selling their house right now, get involved, stop them, check the appraisal, okay? Because people are stealing equity. Not just from my culture in general, but it really bugs me, obviously, when it starts to hit home like this. And this one really hit home, man. You know, and it pains me to know this is still happening, that it's still a concern. It is still happening. It is still a concern. Okay, there is racial bias in appraisals, and it's so easy because appraisers, when they're questioned, I know because I am one. Okay, when you question an appraiser, he's going to dig in his or her heels and say, "I'm right. This is the number. Leave me alone." Okay, and we had an appraiser on the show when we were first going out there. Steve, he was awesome. He gave a very awesome insight into it. I'm not saying all appraisers are bad any more than everybody's saying all cops are bad. That is not the point of discussion. Please save the hate mail. I don't need it. Okay. What I'm telling you is some of them out there got appraisal license with ill intent in their hearts. And those that did can do a lot of damage to the most valuable asset that most people own. It's just so critical we're paying attention right now, guys. You got to know what's happening. The market is changing right before our eyes. Things are going way up in value. And everybody who scraped their pennies together to put a down payment together, everybody who took that extra night job to make sure their income was sufficient enough to allow them to purchase a home, everybody who sweated paying that mortgage and tried to balance feeding the kids versus making that mortgage payment for the month deserves the equity that they've so painstakingly earned. Okay, and that shouldn't be taken from anybody. This system, this process, this racial bias in appraisals is allowing for it to happen, and I simply won't stand for it. I hope you won't either. So get educated. Join up the Foreclosure Deals Coach Insiders Group. Let's talk about it. Join up. I'll do a free property evaluation, any market in the country. I love doing it anyway. Deal analysis is one of my favorite pastimes. I know it's weird, but I'm wired weirdly. I would love to be a part of that. If you got somebody in a refi who's a little uneducated, they maybe haven't been in the real estate market for 20, 30 years, when they bought the house back in the 70s or 80s, then help them out. Step in and assist them in getting valuation. I'd be honored to be a part of that as well. But please, don't stand by and let equity get stolen from any culture, any race, but particularly what's going on right now with racial bias, in this case towards a black couple, or a mixed couple in this case, but the people are suffering from this, and we can do something about it by getting them educated. All right. I'm going to try to lighten up a little bit. This was a topic that needed to be discussed, and I certainly hope you learned something from it. Keep an eye on your appraisals. Know what's going on, because the world is changing, and if we get out in front of it, I'm pretty certain we can avoid this. We're gonna have a show with Mr. John Dotson. I'm going to invite him on the show. We'll get it more scheduled up. We were trying to put it together impromptu, but I want you to hear the aftermath on what happened with that appraisal and how we managed to work it out just by taking professional means, having a conversation with the right people, and ultimately got the value that the house should have come in at. It's not all for naught if it goes bad. There are things you can do to turn that around. With that, this is Donny Corum, your Foreclosure Deals Coach, reminding you this week and every week, number one, go join the Foreclosure Deals Coach Insiders Groups. I'd love to chat with you about it. I want to become a part of your progress in becoming a successful real estate investor, even if it's just investing in the very house that you live in. If you own one house, that's even better. That's better than not owning anything at all. right? And if you're trying to get to that point where you get there, we want to help you with that. So in the meantime, while you're out there shopping, don't let me find out that you're out there buying a house. Buy a deal.
Want more of the Foreclosure Deals Coach? Hit subscribe and stay tuned for more of the mindset, methodology, and tools you'll need to invest in foreclosures. Visit foreclosuredealscoach.com and text DEAL to get a list of foreclosures in your area.